if you start really thinking about rights, especially when you hear it talks about, oh, right to healthcare, or right to housing, or right to decent wage. What is decent? What's an indecent wage? Anyway, I think you can't really resolve any of these things unless you carefully think through the idea of rights. And again, I would encourage you to start with, where do rights come from? Are rights something that we get from other people? Are our rights, fundamental rights, something that we get, I don't know, from our form of the organization of society, from our government? Or are our fundamental rights ours based on the reality of who we are, based on our humanity, based on our nature? I'm inclined to think that we do indeed have natural rights, and they stem from the very nature of who we are as human beings. Now, I'm not talking here about what would be referred to as, say for example, civil rights. Say, for example, the right to be tried by a jury, or the right to due process, and things of that nature. No, those are derivative rights, and those are in fact civil rights. They exist only because there are fundamental rights, and I'm hoping to demonstrate this to you. And also, they only pertain to how we deal with each other in a society. But the fundamental core rights that we have come from the reality of who we are as human beings. Let's look at those rights. I submit to you that there really only are two or three, and they're all interconnected. And you can, I'm pretty sure that you can see that it's not very difficult to understand where those rights come from, and why they are what they are. But I also want to talk not about only, not only what those rights are, but what they mean. The first one is the right to life. Right to life means you own your life. You are free to decide what to do with it, when to do it, whether to do it. And see, in this interpretation, life and liberty kind of become one. You own your life. You are the master of your life. Nobody else owns your body for you. Nobody else can direct you against your will to do something, or to stop you from doing something, unless, of course, you are violating their right. But if you're not if you're not touching anybody, if you're not bothering anybody, basically, this right to life and liberty means that you own your life. You are the master of yourself. You do not belong to another person or a group of people. They cannot treat you as their property. That means that they cannot take your life, they cannot end your life, and they cannot direct your action. Now, if you voluntarily subjected yourself to a relationship, say, an employee-employer relationship, then you are giving permission to your boss to give you direction. In fact, you signed up to follow directions. But that's a voluntary contract. You don't have to get a job with this particular boss. You can start your own business or do whatever, be a self-sufficient farmer and grow your own food, it doesn't matter. But if you enter into a contract, obviously the terms of that contract determine how you're going to follow direction, and whose direction, and whatnot. So I'm talking about a state where people are just existing alongside one another, and in that state, another person should not have the ability to limit your freedom of action, direct your action against your will, or end your life. And what I think is the derivative of that is your right to keep and acquire property. Meaning, in order to survive, you have to use material things. You have to eat, you have to have shelter, you have to have clothing to protect you from the elements. Unless you can have those things, you're not going to survive. So, property is what you do to enhance your quality of life and to protect your life. What is it? What does property right actually mean? What property right is ownership. Ownership in material things. What does ownership of material things mean? If I own an object, what it means is that I can exclude everybody else from using that object. If I own a car, that means that another person cannot just walk up to it, get into it, and drive away in it, because it's the title to that car is mine, and I acquired it by exchanging a certain number of dollars with a dealer, say for example, or a previous owner. If I'm buying a used car, he takes my money, I take his car. We exchange titles to different properties. He now has title to the money. I now have title to the car. It's a voluntary deal, a voluntary exchange. So now I hold the title to that car. That means that I can exclude everybody else from using that car, and they can only use it, touch it, do anything with it with my permission. Unless they do it with my permission, they're violating my property rights. That's what ownership means. To own means to exclude others from using or otherwise touching an object or a material thing. And of course, obviously, if we can't exclude others from using our shelter, our clothing, our food, we cannot really count on surviving very reliably. So property rights are necessary to ensure that we as individuals can in fact plan and execute actions that lead to our survival and enhance our quality of life. If nothing that you need, say for example, if you work and you trade your labor, or you trade your skill for a certain amount of some resource, say gold or paper money, whatever, and then you use that paper money or gold to go into a store and exchange it for something that you need, say a warm jacket if it's wintertime, or if you've made enough money, you exchange it for a house to live in, and then for a car to drive around in, and then somebody else just comes and takes it from you. All your labor, all that work, making that money, saving it up, is all for nothing. So in fact, they rob you of your past. Obviously, that can't stand. So, right to life and liberty and property, those are the fundamental rights that stem from the very nature of our existence. Unless we have those, we're not really human beings. We're animals. We're animals. And I don't want to be an animal. I don't know about you, but I don't want to live like an animal. But if you look at the right to life, is there really a right to life? No. I mean, you don't have a right not to die. You don't have a right not to be struck by lightning. You don't have a right not to be struck by a falling tree in a hurricane. The right to life really only makes sense in relation to other people. Other people. Say if you go into a forest and you get stuck in a marsh and you can't get out, your liberty is limited. Are you going to sue the marsh? No. You walked into the marsh, you got stuck in the mud, you can't get out. Your liberty is limited. But you don't have a right to liberty per se. You have a right to liberty from other people's interference. The same with property. If a hurricane destroys your property, have your rights been violated? Of course not, because hurricanes don't recognize rights. They're not people. Forest fires, the ones that occur naturally, none of those things violate your rights. So in effect, our natural rights, life, liberty, and property, are freedoms from other people. You see? Freedoms from other people. You're free from other people deciding for you what you should and shouldn't do. You're free from other people taking your life and capturing and limiting the actions of your body. And you're free from other people taking and using your property. That's what natural rights are. Natural rights are our freedoms from other people.